up a Zoom virtual meetings to facilitate broadcasting of the BOC meetings and provide for public comments. Normally, for the special session meetings, the agenda does not have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's meeting, with all the health crisis that we are facing, I would like to include the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance to the agenda, and I'd like to ask our city attorney, Mr. Perez, to give us the invocation.
My pleasure. Heavenly Father, send down your blessing on this meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs and upon the individual members who comprise it. Give the commission members a clear sense of duty and lead them to a faithful discharge of the same. Direct them in their deliberations at this meeting so that all things may be done for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the City of Tarpon Springs, especially during this pandemic. This we pray, amen.
Thank you. Now we're going to sing the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Jacob has a flag in the background, so that's good. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible, liberty
and justice for all. Well, thank you, everyone. We are now going to the public comments of the items that will not be discussed this evening. If anyone has any comments, please state your name and your address for the record, and you'll be given 4 minutes. Mrs. Jacobs, have we received any emails for public comments?
We have not received any emails.
Okay. Mr. Ellis, do we have any attendees that wishing to speak?
Anyone wishing to speak in the Zoom app, please raise your hand now. We have none today.
We have none? Okay. The first item on the agenda is a resolution 2020-14, ratification of executive orders. A, 2020-01, declaration of emergency. B is 2020-02, utility penalties, court compliances, permits and inspections in city facilities. C is 2020-03, state of emergency extension through March 31st, 2020. D is 2020-04, state of emergency extension through April 7th, 2020. E is 2020-05, state of emergency extension through April 14, 2020. And F is 2020-06, virtual meetings. City Attorney, if you please read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution 2020-14, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, ratifying Executive Order 2020-06, which provides for virtual public meetings, declaration of policy and uniform rules of procedure during the COVID-19 emergency, ratifying Executive Orders 2020-01, 2020-02, 2020-03, 2020-04, and 2020-05, and providing for an effective date hereof. That has been a reading of the resolution 2020-14 by title only.
Thank you. Mr. Licouris, do you have a staff report for us?
I have nothing to add, just the ratifying of the orders that we have done so far.
Well, I got a couple comments to make on the item B, which is 2020-02, which is the utility penalties, code compliances, permits, inspections, and facility city facilities. I want to emphasize that I support to give Mr. Licouris the authorization not to disconnect the water services to the people due to non-pay. As the resolution stated, that the payment due will not be waived, but also the city manager will be working with the customers, will be working with the residents to work with them and help them with during this crisis. What I like to say is one of the meetings that I had with the city manager, one of the items I wanted to discuss was just that, for him not to shut off the water service And after we finished talking, Mr. LaCourta smiled and he says to me, he says, "You're not going to believe this. Look at my notes. This is one of the items that I wanted to talk to you about." So, Mr. LaCourta, thank you for doing that. And also, I wanted to, the section number 2, I am very glad that the building department is going to continue doing inspections, that we're going to give it permits to keep people working and keep our local economy. If you please say thank you to our building department. The other thing that I want to comment on is the F, which is 2020-026, the virtual meetings. Suzanne, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and to thank Frank Ellis and the other technicians for working with the city manager to prepare this video conferencing so we can have this meeting tonight. So I appreciate it. And also I'm looking forward to that Frank and all the rest of you preparing the video conferencing for the advisory reports for the planning and zoning, for the Board of Adjustments, the heritage preservation, as we discussed the last meeting. That's going to help us to give out permits so that people keep working. So thank you for doing that. That's, do we have any other commission comments?
No.
We all good? Okay. Are there any public comments? Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
We have not received any emails on this subject.
Mr. Ellis, do we have any attendees that wish to speak?
We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay. If not, we will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Coe,
Yes.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Terapany,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes. We are now going to the item number 2, which is the resolution 2020-13, Business Endurance Grant Program. City Attorney, if you please read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-13, a resolution of the City of Tarpon Springs Board of Commissioners establishing a Tarpon Springs Small Business Endurance Grant, establishing application and guidelines for the administration of the grant, and establishing an effective date. This has been a reading of Resolution 2020-13 by title only.
Thank you. Mr. LaCourta, staff report.
Yes, before I go to Ms. Lemons, I think we need to start at the beginning where this started. And I'd like to turn it over just briefly to Commissioner Donovan to where it all started and what he submitted to us. And then I'll bring Karen on to tell you where we went from there.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Yeah, essentially where this started was just, we were all asking ourselves, how can we do more? And so I did some research into what other cities and communities were doing, if there were any types of grants, because I had seen a bunch of stuff about loans from, bigger government. And so I ended up landing in the city of Roseville, California, and the state of Michigan for some initial criteria and just guidelines based on what they were doing. So that's when I started looking into somewhat of a grant program that we could do somehow. And obviously a big thank you to staff for taking this and running with it. But overall, I think the message is that, our job as commissioners and city leaders isn't to sit back and say, well, when can big government come and take care of us? I think what this grant does is we take care of ourselves. We have the money available right now to do it. So why wouldn't we help our local businesses? Again, obviously we're open to discussion, but I'll turn it over to Karen to explain a little bit more about the details.
Okay, and again, staff took this project and ran with it because we know what good it would do for the community. So I'll turn it over to Karen, and she took it from Commissioner Donovan's emails. And again, a lot of people, IT, Judy Stale, a lot of people were involved in this. So Karen, I'll turn it over to you. Come on and tell us about the model of the grant we have for the commission to look at and make whatever adjustments necessary. Our plan was to try to make it simple while getting all the information we needed on it. So it'd be easy to do, easy to process, still cover all the information we needed, but to be able to process and have those checks to the people as fast as possible. So I'll turn it over to Karen.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Commissioner Donovan as well, and also all of the city departments. This has really been a citywide effort. Our finance department, procurement, business development, city manager's office, cultural service, IT, huge shout out to them, HR, city clerk, everybody has pitched in a very short amount of time to help make this program happen. So I'll go through the fact sheet and the application, the eligibility criteria, and then we can open it up to changes and suggestions. As you know, the program provides a direct relief to our small businesses by providing a one-time $1,000 grant. The goal is to provide that direct relief by those who have been impacted most by the COVID-19 virus. As the city manager said, we want to keep it simple for the application process that our small business owners can navigate it, and we can get checks in their hands relatively quickly. So we created an online application process that makes it very easy for the applicants to submit everything online. We'll be reviewing the applications for completeness and eligibility by a team of city staff. So the criteria for eligibility includes the businesses must be located in the city. They must have a physical storefront for public gathering. And they've been directly impacted by the COVID-19 public health requirements and by the executive order. So this would include restaurants, cafes, bars, breweries, distilleries, gyms, fitness centers, retail stores, personal service stores like hair and nail salons, all those that have been directly impacted by the CDC guidelines. They must be in need of working capital, and they must be able to demonstrate that need. They must have fewer than 50 employees. And on the original fact sheet, you see we've got that they must have no active code enforcement case. In talking today, going over the details, we talked with Chief Coach, and we're recommending a change to that. And rather than no active code enforcement cases, we'd like to change that to say that a business must have no outstanding code enforcement fines. And what that does is it differentiates between those businesses who have active cases, but they have time to remedy the situation, versus those that have gone through the entire process, have done no mitigation, and fines are being levied. So our intention is not to penalize any business that has still has time to remedy any open code enforcement case. So we'd like to change that to say that a business must have no outstanding code enforcement fine. And then we're requiring a current business tax license. Originally, we were asking applicants to download a copy of their license with the application. But again, in an effort to streamline and make it a little bit easier, we would like to rather have them put their license number on the online application so that way, and then city staff can verify it. For ineligible businesses are the franchises and chain stores and restaurants and nonprofit organizations. Eligible grant uses are essentially any expenses related to running their business, such as working capital, payroll, debt payments like utility bills, rent or mortgage, marketing, costs of establishing e-commerce if they don't have any online. A lot of businesses now are going online because they need to, and any inventory. Cannot use it for any personal expenses or anything, obviously that's prohibited by law. And then the documentation with the online application, again, it would include their business tax license number, their IRS form W-9, which is what finance requires in order to cut a check. We're asking them to estimate their revenue loss due to the pandemic, and they could do this by estimating their current sales versus their projected sales, or looking at their year over sales. We're asking them to describe how they were going to be using the grant funds in a budget, and the number of employees that they have now versus what they had a year ago, and the years that they've been in business at that location. We're also asking them to agree to document within 30 days how they spent the grant. And then we're providing a statement that they're providing accurate information to us. And under review, again, we have a team of city staff who will review the applications for completeness and eligibility. And then checks should be issued through the finance department. And if all goes according to the plan, they should be in the hands of the businesses by the end of April. For assistance and questions by applicants, we've created a web page on the city website, and there will be a link on the front page taking you to the site called Tarpon Springs Small Business Endurance Grant. And all the information, including the fact sheet and the application, will be there. We've also created a dedicated email, which is endurancegrant@ctsfl.us. That's for any questions to be emailed to us. We've got a team of city staff who will be responding to those emails. We've also created a dedicated phone number, 727-943-1162. That will be answered by a voicemail, and it will provide details on the program, inform the caller to go to the website for the information in the application. They can leave a message at that number, and those messages will go to that same city staff team who will be able to respond to those phone messages. And then if anybody wants to submit a hard copy, we have made provisions for them to pick up and drop off applications at the city clerk's office via their drive-through window. And since they have staff there, they can stamp and time and date stamp the applications in the event we need to go to a first come, first serve. And then to advertise the program, we'll be issuing a press release. We'll be posting on the city website, on all of the various Facebook pages, the cities, the Tarpon Business Happenings, which is a new one we created, Explore Tarpon Springs, all of the other city departments that have sites, including recreation. We'll be sharing it with the Chamber and the Merchants Association. They both have their own email distributions to their members, and also through social media. We expect that the word will get out quickly. I've already gotten some calls on it. So I think our business owners will also be pitching in to help spread the word to their colleagues. Also in your packet are some alternatives for consideration. These were based on feedback that we had received earlier. One includes funding, whether you want the funding to come from reserves or from general fund. The other consideration was the business tax license, if you want to include that or make some other provisions for that. And then there was some wording about owners who have multiple businesses. And the intent that we have for the grant is if you own multiple businesses, you only get one grant, regardless of how many businesses you own. If that wants to be changed, that's also a consideration that could be done. And then before the end of the meeting, we would need to establish a timeline. And we've got the outline on the grant fact sheet of those dates that we'll need to consider. So with that, again, I just want to thank everybody who's been involved in creating this program, and just look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Licorice, you have something else that you'd like to add?
No, just waiting for input from the board on this.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to start by say thank you to Commissioner Donovan for introducing the idea to us. I think this is a great program. This is a great opportunity that we have to help our local businesses that they suffer economically. Also, I'd like to express my appreciation to Mr. Licorice and the staff for responding quick in such a short time to developing this program. Thank you, Karen. Thank you to Ron Herrick and to other staff for bringing this finance program so quickly to us to help businesses that are suffering economically. I am full agreement to provide small businesses endurance program to our businesses to provide assistance to for what they need they desperately need at this time. I've received many phone calls from businesses, from local businesses, and they expressed their concern, and they told me the difficulty that they have to make ends meet. Now they have no income at all, so they're looking for our help. I agree that and endorse to use the $100,000 from the unassigned funds, the emergency fund, as we call it, which is a very, very healthy fund. It's $8.8 million. And the purpose of that is for emergency. And this is the worst emergency that we ever had. This is the same fund that we used for the Irma hurricane, and we got reimbursed from FEMA, hoping we're going to get some reimbursement for this one here again. If not, that's okay, because we are here to serve our people in Tarpon Springs, and that's what the fund is for. Mr. Licouris and Karen, what I'd like to hear from you is if you give us an idea how many businesses that will be applying for the grant. I'm not sure. I don't know if the $100,000 is enough, but I am in favor to increase the number in case the $100,000 is not enough. Make sure every eligible businesses it has the opportunity to get these $1,000 to help them out. You said that first come, first serve. I don't want them to be, in that. We don't want to be in that position. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to get help. That's what I would like to see. And I am very confident, my fellow commissioners, I am very confident that our staff, with the leadership of the city manager, they have the ability, the capability, the dedication, and the high integrity to administrate this program. So I feel very, very comfortable that we're going to have, that program is going to be successful, and we're going to accomplish what we want to accomplish, is to help our local businesses. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Vice Mayor Terrapini, and I come back to later when we're discussing about criteria.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in this evening, and Commissioner Donovan and staff for this initiative, and not just the bringing it to light to the commission's attention at our last meeting, but also how quickly y'all acted on this. I think it's great. And I see that other cities are starting to jump on board more and more with this. I know that an email from Karen and the city manager basically allows that other Pinellas County municipalities are kind of tuning into our meeting tonight to see which direction our leadership takes. So thank you all first and foremost. Just to, as we all get used to talking to the computer screen and hearing each other's thoughts, just to kind of keep it relatively brief, I'll hit on some of the points. I think it's, what's been outlined is a great proposal. It's relatively simplistic, which I think is a good thing in this nature. I think the funding source is basically the right place to look. It's a reserve fund for a reason, and it's always been referred to as something for a rainy day, or definitely an emergency as it relates to a hurricane or something like this. So I agree with the mayor that, in my mind, this would without a doubt qualify for usage of those funds. I think that some of the public discussion that I've heard on this regarding the $1,000, just to touch on that for a minute, as far as how far that goes for a business within the community. I think if you look at these stimulus funds, whether it's from a municipality like Tarpon Springs or a bigger municipality, and the amounts that you own, I think if you look at it like holistically and say, okay, the city of Tarpon Springs is going to give me $1,000, and the federal government is going to give me X, and there's going to be some money from the state, on the state level too. I think it will amount to something that will really, in the long run, help keep these businesses afloat, which is so important to, not only our local economy, but also as it relates to giving our residents the goods and services that they desire. And I would add that, as of late, our residents are really supporting our local businesses more so, in my opinion, than ever. So we definitely want to stand behind them and do the right thing. So I think the $1,000 per business, 100 total applicants, is a good place to start. In the event that these funds fly off the shelf, so to speak, I would be open to the consideration for more. But as we've all seen with this whole virus to begin with, it's a day-by-day deal. So hopefully, we won't need more. But in the event that we do and it is warranted, I would definitely support that moving forward. Some of the other aspects of the grant, or questions or even feedback, one would be that staff is going to develop a team to review these applicants. I think that's a good thing. My question would be, how many staff members is that made up of? And then how quickly we anticipate being able to turn these applicants or applications around in the event that they literally do, fly off the shelf and within a week we have 100 applicants. I just want to make sure that we act expediently enough to where, they're being processed and the funds are going out like we're seeing being done on a federal level. In addition to that, there was a criteria that the 50 employees or less, or 50 employees or less. And I would just throw out there for consideration if we wanted to further refine that and just say that it's, 50 prior to the time of the governor, less than 50 prior to the time, the governor ordered the shutdown or the executive order or whatever, because obviously businesses are running with less employees now. So if you were at 80 and now you're at 50 and the grant's applicable now or before, I just think that there could be a little definition needed there on when you went down to 50 employees. In addition to that, I think for eligibility, it's important to add some criteria in regards to residency and or number of years in business. So I would do it as an and or that you reside in the city of Tarpon Springs and or own a business or have operated a business for the last, 3 to 5 years. And I'm open to discussion in terms of the number or the length of a term you've been in business. Other than that, I'm pretty amenable to all of it.
Commissioner Sieber? Can't hear you.
Muted.
It's on the bottom left corner.
Up here at the top.
There,
Okay, can
there
you
it
hear
is.
me? All right, thank you. I didn't see my email in the backup that I copied you all on my feelings about the grant. I think it's a great opportunity and absolutely necessary for our business owners. I know there are other opportunities to get funding, but many of them are loans. And from the business owners that I've talked to, they know that when things are back in operation, it'll be our downtime. And so paying a loan off during off season is not very practical for a lot of people. So I think this grant is going to be helpful, although it's very small amounts compared to what businesses need to reopen and continue paying their rents, their mortgages, their electric. But in any way, it's very useful. As far as requiring business owners to live in Tarpon Springs, as you mentioned, Commissioner Terrapini, we have many business owners, even on the docks, who do not live in Tarpon Springs and have been in business for a long time. We try to recruit businesses from outside this area and welcome them to Tarpon Springs and want them to open businesses here. And then I feel like we're going to treat them as second-class citizens by not allowing them the opportunity for a grant when they've put in a lot of money to open the business, and some may not even be able to reopen because of this catastrophe, which brings me back to the timeline of how long they've been in business. I know of several businesses right now who opened just a few months ago, even as little as 1 month ago. They may never be able to reopen if they don't get some help. And I know there are other opportunities out there for bars and restaurants with the Bartenders Association and the National Restaurant Association, but all this takes a lot of time. So I'm obviously agreeing that this grant is valuable, but I don't agree that a business owner must live in Tarpon Springs. And the timeline, I don't think matters, because we want to keep our businesses here. If we start to let people not be accepted into for this program if they don't live here, or if they just opened, we may have many businesses close. So I'd like to take that into consideration. As far as needing, as far as being able to get this grant as an owner instead of a business, and if you own more than one business, I think that's kind of, I don't agree with that. Just on the Sponge Docks alone, we have business owners who own 2, 3, and 4 businesses, like Julie, Rusty Bellies, Mykonos, Dimitri, and Fornos are owned by one person. Gloria with 3 stores, Anesti with 2 stores, Naomi with 4 businesses. It's just, you don't stop having expenses because you own another business. So you still have the rents and the mortgages and the electric and the internet and whatever else to keep your business open or keep it going until you can reopen. Those expenses are all there. So I would suggest that we don't limit it to just the business owner, but to each business. And I know funds could run out, but I also agree that we should be using our reserve funds for this because this is an emergency, as the 2 of you have said, and this is what these funds are for. So I guess that's about it. I may have more questions later, but keeping it simple and fast is of the utmost importance. Many business owners can't wait a month and need to get some kind of funding now. So I appreciate all of your help, and thank you, Karen and Commissioner Donovan and Mark. So that's it for now.
Thank you. Commissioner Carr?
Thanks, Mayor. Commissioner Donovan, thank you for bringing this forward to the city, and city staff, and Mark, thank you for being diligent and getting us through as quick as you can. There's a couple things I just want to clarify in the verbiage of the eligibility. One thing it says here, it is for Tarpon Springs businesses. I think it's important that it reflects incorporated Tarpon Springs, because as you know, Tarpon Springs goes over to Eastlake, goes north and south on Pinellas Avenue, and it's not incorporated Tarpon Springs. So I think to refine that a little bit further on the application is a good idea. I do agree that I think the funds coming from the unassigned funds is the best place for where they're to come from for these. And to touch base on if a business owner lives in Tarpon Springs or not, I think it's important if the business owner is in Tarpon Springs that they qualify regardless if they call Tarpon Springs home or not. I think it's important that we support our businesses that are in Tarpon Springs today. It doesn't affect me if someone lives in Tarpon in that aspect or not. So I'm okay with them living outside of the city, but as long as they have their business storefront here in Tarpon Springs and incorporated Tarpon Springs, that's going to be an important part of it. Karen, I've got a couple questions if you could help me on the criteria or the eligibility. It talks about they have to have a business license. So if a business doesn't know that they need a business license today, and then they come in and apply and they say, well, I don't have a business license. Can they come in, let's say next week, and apply for a business license, and then they're now eligible for the grant?
Yes, they should know that they should have a business license, but in case they don't, they can apply online. There's an online application through Building Development, so they can apply online. They can send an email for those who maybe haven't renewed their license. They can send an email to Building Development and get the cost and pay for that. So in talking with Building Development, it takes about 5 to 7 days if you're applying for a new business license to get that license. So we could add that as a, if they don't have it, we can approve it pending the application and payment of the license.
Okay, I think that's a good idea just because it gives an opportunity to educate some of our business owners that may not have business license that are operating. And then I've got a question about the revenue impact as well. So what's the reason for the question? Because there's a question, but there's no requirement to have an impact in revenue, right? So I just want to say, if we're asking questions to the business owners, do you have any impact to your revenue? And let's say, no, we don't have any impact to revenue. We're actually up 25%. They're still eligible for the grant, right? So I just want to know, what's the reasoning for asking the revenue impact? And then if there is the reason that you have, should we put some type of criteria in place to say, well, your revenue should be impacted if you're going to qualify for the grant?
Well, your last statement is exactly what the intention is. If they're up, if their business is up, you know, grocery stores, and there's some businesses that are doing well, toilet paper manufacturers, they wouldn't qualify for the grant. That's why we're asking them to show the impact that it's had on their business, if it's through their sales, their projected sales, their current sales. So yes, that's the intent, to show an impact. If they haven't been impacted and they have not experienced any loss, then they wouldn't be eligible. This is meant for businesses who have had a loss in their revenues.
Okay, so if that's the case, we need to define that a little bit further in here. And I like the idea of being as simple as it can, but that's not clear in this. So we do need to have some type of language then, if staff isn't going to approve an application because of revenue has gone up, then we need to put something in the criteria eligibility to say that if your business has to be impacted negatively by this COVID-19.
Okay.
One question, if you could define further too, Commissioner Sieber brought this one up, I believe, as well, is so what happens if the business hasn't been open longer than a year, to even compare last year's revenue to this year's revenue, is an area that I would like some clarification on. If staff is going to be, how would they evaluate that?
If they haven't been in business to compare year to year, then we'd be asking them to look at their projected revenues and what they're actually experiencing right now.
Okay.
Because when you open a business, you'd have your projections for what you expect to be earning or making during that time period. So we'd be asking them to give us their projections on what they expected and what they're actually doing now.
Okay. That's fine with me. One of the questions I have too is how long is this going to be open to apply for? Is this going to be a month and a half or 2 months to apply for? I think there needs to be some type of timeline here that the grant is only open for 2 months, let's say, to get applications submitted. Is there anything that we talked about for that?
Yeah, internally, we actually talked about just having it open for a week.
Okay.
And that way we could, we've got a team, we feel pretty confident that we can get through these, give us a week to get through them. And by the end of the month, then they would have their checks.
So I would be open for that to being open a little bit longer. I don't know if 2 weeks might be a little more manageable as well, just so word gets out. I know, I mean, when you're giving money out, it gets out pretty quickly, right? That everyone's going to find out pretty quick. But in the situation that we're in, I would think at least 2 weeks would be something that we would want to look at to get some applications in.
Commissioner, my idea was, obviously we've got a meeting the 14th. So if we open these grants up like expected on Thursday, which is we have full intention to take your input, put everything together tomorrow, and have the ability to put the grant out Thursday, that by the time we got to Tuesday, we probably would have a good idea of whether we need to ask you for more money, or for instance, if we said they were coming in slower than expected, the ability to extend the time. So we can do it either way. If you wanted to add a second week, but we put a team together. One of the questions before was a team. We put together an A team, and then we put together a backup team to be able to process all 100, 125, whatever comes in, to be able to do that in a week's time, so finance can process and get the checks, sometime, as early as we can before the end of the month. But we can do that either way, and we do have the 14th to ask for something like an extension of time, or we already know we're going over the 100,000. Can you add 30 more thousand to it or approval of that? We could also do that if necessary on the 14th.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Karen, we got an email from the Board of Commissioners received an email from the city attorney's office that stated there's probably 150 to 200 businesses that could apply for this or that would qualify for this grant program. The way it's written today, it talks about the first 100. So how would the city deal with like applications like 95 through 105 to determine who qualifies, who got in first, etc.? And then I know based on what the mayor was stating, that he's open to allowing any business that could qualify to provide funding for it, which I would also be willing to exceed some funding as well. So I just want to understand from a staff level, kind of what the thought process is there.
So what we would be doing is when the applications come in, if they come in by email, there's obviously a time and a date to those applications. If they're dropped off at the city clerk's office, they will be time dated and stamped also. So we'll keep those, we'll process them all regardless of how many we get. If it exceeds the current amount of funding, then that would be, we either go to first come, first serve, and we would have that list in order, or if you choose to increase the budget, then we would be able to provide additional funding for all those over 100.
Okay. So just for clarification, let's say someone filled out their application wrong and they submitted it and they were number 55. And then by the time someone from staff got to it and replied back to the business owner, and the business owner then replied back, now they're 115. Would they still keep their line or place in line where they first submitted their application at number 55 then?
I would say as long as they got their documentation in before the deadline and we were finalizing everything, I would say yes. Our plan is as these applications come in, we're not going to just wait and then we're going to do them as they come in. So
Okay.
we'll be able to have, if they're incomplete, we'll be able to get back to them right away and say, you need to fill in this, this, and this. And I expect that they will.
Okay. All right, great. I don't have any further questions right now. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you, Mark, again for moving forward with this grant, and the rest of the staff. I know it's not just you two, but there's multiple people that have worked on this. And again, Commissioner Donovan, I really appreciate you spearheading this and pushing it forward.
Commissioner Carr, before I go to Commissioner Donovan, I didn't hear that you are agreed the funding to come from the reserves.
Yes, the unassigned funds, I completely agree with that.
Thank you. I didn't hear that part. Commissioner Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, before I get into some more comments, I just had a couple questions for Karen real quick. Can you hear me, Karen?
Yep. Yes.
So one, I just wanted to clarify for the eligible businesses, when it says a business is public facing, I actually got a couple calls asking, saying, hey, I'm in Tarpon Tower or the arcade building or something like that. Am I still technically public facing? So I think essentially what this one's saying is just no home-based businesses. Is that correct?
Yeah, if they have a storefront, whether, it could be in the arcade, it could be, but a storefront and a place where people are going into versus a home-based business or a business that doesn't, by phone, but doesn't require anybody to come into their office or their store.
Okay, thank you. And I think maybe that's something we could add if you want to the ineligible businesses, if we just put another dot and put home-based businesses or virtual businesses. And then as far as some of the more broad points that we talked about, one, great catch, Chief Cochin, on the code enforcement thing. That could have really hurt some businesses if, say, I had a $15 fine for putting a sign outside my business and then I didn't qualify because I couldn't pay it in time or, what have you. I agree with Commissioner Carr about the incorporated aspect. I think it's kind of common sense, but it'd be good to put it on there so we don't get a string of businesses from Eastlake or unincorporated Tarpon saying, hey, I technically should apply. I like that we're flexible with how they estimate their revenue. So even if I think even if I, let's say I own a business and, this time last year, I had one guy come in, buy my whole store, and then it's going to kind of skew my data. I could also use what I was projected to make this month. So I do support the projected revenue. As far as residency goes, I have heard this from a couple residents asking, if we could just make it for residents of Tarpon Springs. But I personally disagree. I don't really think it matters where your residency is. The money's coming back into Tarpon Springs because they own a business in Tarpon Springs. I don't care if you live on Mars and you commute to Tarpon Springs every day for work. I mean, the money's still coming back here. Also, just to address another argument that I've heard is that, every government in the world has declared a state of emergency. So I think it's completely appropriate for us to use our reserve fund. And I think it's also to remember too, that just because we dip into the reserve fund now for this, that doesn't mean we can't replenish it later. We can continue to be creative with our budget and replenish that at any time. So once we start getting down the road a little bit, and we can look and we can say, okay, well, what can we cut out of our budget to make up for that 100,000? So I don't think, it's not something where if we take $100,000 right now, it's gone forever. I think there's plenty of opportunities in the future to replenish that. And I think that addresses everything as far as the points go. As far as increasing the fund, I think we can kind of play it by ear. If we need to increase it, I'd be comfortable increasing it. But I think maybe for now we should see where this 100,000 gets us, see how quick everything goes. I'm also okay with requiring that businesses have a current business tax license, so long as that they can, apply for one. And I think that covers everything. Let me know if it didn't.
Okay, thank you. I have comments and questions. I will start with the business tax license. Mr. Licorice, do we have something in place that will remind to the businesses that they need to have occupational license? We used to call it the occupational license.
Mhm.
Now we call it the business tax license, which is the same thing. Do we have something in place that to notify them, knowing that this is something they have to get every year?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and
And
it's up to
again,
them.
going back to the process time of normal time, we will make sure if you decide to give them the ability to do that we'll expedite that license. And if you decide to do it instead of normal time frame and stuff, we can expedite that if you so choose.
We send notifications out the beginning of the year, let them know that, their license expires. Is that how that works?
Yes, and then also reminders, because if they don't get it, I forget the time, and we don't have Kevin on here and stuff the time, but after a certain amount of time, there's a $250 penalty to renew and stuff. So we do those notices, and I think it's 6 months maybe. I'm not sure of the time frame on there, but we do the notices and stuff to let them know.
So I was saying that now that some of the people do not have the occupational license, is going to be a fine if they don't have it?
For instance, if they didn't renew it or stuff, there is that the price is by your ordinance and stuff. That's how it is. There is I believe it's $250.
Well, to me, this time with crisis, I don't think this is time to impose any fines, any additional fines. They already have a tough time to begin with. So if I have the support of if I have the consensus of the board, I like to make sure that we waive those charges, but they need to understand that from now on, they need to apply and make sure that they get the occupation license. Do I have consensus with that?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. What was your question, Mayor? If they don't have it, they won't a fine be levied, but
Well,
they'll
the way it
eligible?
is now, if they don't have the occupation license or the business tax license, there's a fine.
Right, you're
So
just saying, what does that do
What
for
I want is
eligibility?
to waive the fine if it is one now, and just to make sure that they're going to get, they're going to apply it, and from now on, they're going to be getting those licenses.
So they would still be eligible if their license was expired?
Yeah,
Gotcha. As long as they had one from the previous year?
yeah.
Well, no, they would have to get one now. They'd have to apply and get one
They have to
now.
apply one
Oh,
for now.
but waive
What
the
this
fine.
commission would do was during this time period, during this week time period, that you could, or during the time period of this grant, that you would waive that. you would waive that provision of the penalty if you go the amount of time with it. You'd waive the penalty for that period.
So for example, the application would get bounced back to the applicant and say, hey, you're not complete, you don't have a business license. Then they would pay for a business license without a fine, and then their application would, in theory, be complete.
Yes.
Yes, and we'd expedite that process.
Oh, I get it. I support that.
Commissioner Siebert, I didn't hear from you. You okay with that?
I'm okay, but I do have a comment. Every business owner in Tarpon Springs is required to have a business license when they open their business. They get that license and they have to renew it every year. If they're not doing that, then they're fined, as Mr. LaCour has said. I agree that we can, I guess, not fine them if they didn't get their business license renewed. But I do want to say, Mr. LaCour, that as a business owner, I never get notices, and then there is a problem with that because I've heard other business owners say the same thing. So I think we really need to look into the annual notices that go out and make sure that every business owner does get one, because I haven't gotten one in years. So, I know I have to pay it, so I do, but it's just something that I feel like we really need to look at, because we're losing money on probably many businesses who don't get their renewal and just forget about it and don't pay it. So I think that's where we really need to be diligent in that department to make sure that we are getting paid what we need to be paid by the business owners. But I'm fine with waiving the penalty at this time if the business owner has not renewed their license.
Okay.
And we will do that.
Required.
We will look at the process.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carr, you okay with that, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. The question was that only the businesses eligible when the owners are Tarpon Springs residents. To me, I think everybody should be eligible as long as they have the business in Tarpon Springs, because when we attract a business, we never ask them if they live in Tarpon Springs. So,
Mayor, could I clarify my point, please?
yes, sir.
Okay. So what I said is that it was an and or. So for example, if the business was in Tarpon Springs, but the owner didn't live in Tarpon Springs, but they had their business open for a period in time, 3 years, 2 years or more, whatever the case may be, it would be an and or, so they would be eligible. For example, all of the businesses that have been in the Sponge Docks for years, if they don't live in Tarpon Springs, they're still eligible because they've been in business for more than 2 years, right? The other
Yes.
example would be the person who just opened a business, let's just say less than 3 years, but does live in Tarpon Springs, they would also be eligible because they live in Tarpon Springs. So it works both ways. And the idea is not to exclude people from their eligibility. Obviously, we want to help as many people as we can, but the $100,000 is only going to go so far. So it's just a measure of, some criteria just to ensure that the funds, are put in the right hands over the course of time versus running out of funds immediately. So, I just wanted to make sure it was known that it was not trying to exclude people who do not reside in Tarpon Springs. It was just another layer of a benchmark that was an and or situation, not either you live in town or not. So, I'm open to the board, but I'm just saying that's the point.
Okay. Well, again, what I will support is any businesses, they are in Tarpon Springs limits, regardless if they are Tarpon Springs residents or not. Same thing.
Could I make a statement?
Sure.
Yeah, we have multiple new businesses in Tarpon who've only been open like 6 months or less. I don't think that they should be penalized by not receiving any funds. We want them to reopen. We want them to stay in Tarpon Springs. And I disagree that there should be a time limit on how long the business has been open. If we need more funds, then I think we need to use more funds to be able to help as many businesses as possible. But I agree that they don't need to be a resident, and I don't feel that there should be a time frame of how long they've been open. So I just wanted to make myself clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you. the other comment that was made that if we're going to qualify businesses that one owner owns more than one business, right now, I will support that one owner for one business to make sure that we have funding, enough funding for everyone. I haven't heard from everyone. What is your opinion and what are you supporting? Vice Mayor, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I would support that, Mayor. I think what's been proposed in the backup is that, after the allotted time, first, let me touch on that. I think 1 week is not long enough, but after the allotted time, if there was leftover funds, if business owners who had more than one business wanted to reapply for, their second or third business, that's something I would support. But I think initially it's one per business. And then if there's additional funds left over, then somebody could reapply if they have multiple businesses.
Okay.
But in addition to that, I think the 1 week processing period is not enough. I think for, some business owners who aren't tech savvy, who are going to need to do some of this more so by hand, we would need to provide a little bit more time than that.
Okay. Any comments from the other commissioners?
I have one, Mayor.
Yes, please.
I agree. I think one grant per business owner, regardless of that additional businesses. The way it's proposed, I agree the way it's proposed. And if there's anything extra at the end, then at that point, I think that should be sufficient. One thing I want to come back to is Mark said it, or maybe Karen said, I can't remember, it takes about 5 to 7 business days to process a business license. And if the application period is only open for 7 days, then it might be difficult for a business license to be processed during that timeline as well. So I don't know if we need to look at that further or define that a little bit better.
What I said was that we would expedite that process, but I have no problem, if you want to extend it to 2 weeks. I mean, we plan on the team's ready to go Thursday. If we do 30 or 40 of them Tuesday, that's fine. We're going to have them ready to go. And when we have applications ready to go, I think we have to have them to run by Wednesday or Thursday to process. So we could always, and we would plan to process that first group. If they're in the second week and stuff, then it'd just be another week before they go. But there's no problem if you wanted to make it 2 weeks instead of one, because we still plan on processing and getting a first check run out to them the end of next week. So the time limit isn't, but on that process, I had said before that that's the normal process, but we will make sure building would expedite that process also. But I have no problem if you want to make it a 2 week time period. But we're just going to go, we'll start processing them on Thursday, and we'll probably have some ready for Ron on his list to do and make checks as they go along. So,
Mark.
So whichever way you want to do it.
Yes, Mark, I agree with Commissioner Carr. I know that you're anxious, that you want to be able to help the local businesses. I know you're going to be working hard. You're going to have our team to, they're going to be working very, very hard in order to provide the help to the people. But I still don't think 1 week is going to be enough time. I think we ought to work for 2 weeks. And if you can do it in 1 week, we're going to like that. So give yourself another week. I think 2 weeks at least is going to be, something that you want to be able to work with.
Yeah. Well, I think when we put this together, obviously, have you seen with this thing, things change so rapidly, and where I might have the manpower to do it now, things could change very well in a week. I could lose workforce and that, but 2 weeks is fine. We'll process them as fast as we can, and we'd hope the people to want the check sooner and get them in faster, because again, we don't know what our situation is going to be in a week. They change day by day. So that was another reason to put the short time frame on, but 2 weeks is fine. 2 weeks will be fine for the grant.
And yeah, believe me, next week, in the next meeting, I will remind you to give us an update on that. So,
yes.
Yeah. Commissioner Seabury, you have a question? Comment?
Thank you. And I have a question, and you touched on that, Mark, but I wanted to make sure. If applicants got in their paperwork, are the funds then distributed first come, first serve, or do you wait until you've gotten all the applications and then start the funding? But I think you said as you get the application, then you do funding for that business owner. Is that correct?
Yes, we're gonna prepare everyone that's come in. Probably, I think Ron's got to run the checks and start them on a Wednesday. So by next Wednesday, if you approve this, the grant starts Thursday. We're gonna try to process everyone that comes in and get it to Ron Wednesday or Thursday, whenever it is that week after, to process the first check run. Now, the second week, if someone gets them in the second week, then the same way, by the Wednesday after that, we will get them in for a second check run. But we're gonna
Okay.
process them and get for the first check run when it's available, the ones that are checked, processed, and approved, we're gonna process that and get those sent out.
Okay, and then to touch on one business owner with one business, as I had mentioned earlier, there are business owners on the docks who own 3 storefronts, 4 storefronts. So I still feel that we need to help all those storefronts because all the storefronts have the expenses. So when we do the initial one business owner, I feel that we should be able to extend it to their other storefronts and use additional funds because, like I said, those expenses don't go away for the additional storefronts. These, they still have their rents, their mortgages, their electric, their internet, insurance, all the requirements needed to open a business. So I really feel that, maybe if we just start with the business owner, we should look into other businesses that they own as well and make them eligible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we go to the public comments? Commissioner Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to touch on those 2 points, I think 1 per owner is the most equitable way to start with this. And I'm fine with 2 weeks as long as we emphasize to those businesses that it is first come, first serve.
Vice Mayor, do you want to comment before we go to public comments? You have anything else that you want to add?
No, I think we covered it all
everything.
basically.
Okay.
Yeah, in a roundabout way. I mean, are you gonna, after public comments, are you gonna look for a motion of sorts, Mayor? Or how you
Yeah,
gonna
of
handle it?
course. Yeah, we'll bring it back to the commission and see if we have any more additional comments.
Gotcha.
Commissioner Carr, any other comments before we go to the public comments? No, we're good. Okay. We are now going to the public comments. Mr. Jacobs, do we have any emails on this item?
Yes, we received an email. It is from Peter Delakis, 514 Ashland Avenue, which reads, "My comments on grants. Good idea and program. Agree with Mayor that enough dollars in reserve to fund all eligible one time. Start with 100,000 and on 14th we can increase it. Don't agree that owner has to live in Tarpon Springs, just the business in Tarpon Springs and follow criteria that Karen spoke of. Agree with Commissioner Sieber as not to limit it to one owner. It should be by individual business and business in city limits." And that was the comment we received.
Thank you. That's all we got, right?
From the emails, yes.
Okay. Mr. Ellis, do we have any attendees that wish to speak on the item?
Yes, we have 1 hand raised now. If anyone else from the public would wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature at this time. I'll be bringing in the first speaker now.
Hello, Commissioners. Mrs. Carrie Root speaking. I'm at 203 South Spring Boulevard here in our beautiful city of Tarpon Springs. I have been enjoying the view from my bayou since I've been locked in here, so I am very happy I get a chance to enjoy that for a change. I'd like to speak on this. I am a small business owner in Tarpon, and I have been rapidly trying to apply for every grant available, as I'm sure many business owners here have been as well. My first comment is to thank Connor for thinking out of the box. You did a great job there. I really applaud you on that. And I also recognize the city staff and the city manager. Turning an idea like that around into something actionable as quickly is not easy, and I commend you for doing that. All right, I want to talk about first the business license. I have paid my business license ever since I moved down here full-time, and I have 2 businesses that I'm actually paying on right now, and I've always paid them. I think waiving the fine, which are certainly in your purview, but that rewards business owners for not having license up to this point. So if you are going to waive the penalty, I would request that you require them to reinstate and get licenses back to when they open their business, not just now for the purpose of filing the grant. So I would ask you to consider that. So if a business has been in place for 5 years and they've never gotten a business license, make them go back and get, those licenses retroactive for 5 years. Make them responsible for the city that they're looking for a handout from. The second thing I wanted to say about that is I have 2 businesses and I always get my renewal notices. The city makes it extremely easy for me to pay my my business license, and I greatly appreciate that convenience because it really helps me. The last comment I'm going to make is that I would strongly consider that board members include them as themselves as being ineligible for the grant. Otherwise, it looks like you're voting for something that will benefit yourself, should you choose to apply for this. And with that, I conclude my my comments. Thank you very much, Mayor, for letting me have a chance.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, is anybody else?
There are no more raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have any additional commission comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Can you,
Sorry, Mayor, I was just going to ask, can we clarify on the motion? Is it as proposed by Karen Lemons, or is it the items how do we discussed, or do we get a little more clarification on that?
Yeah, motion to approve as per our discussions. I think we had consensus on everything.
Okay.
I second that.
Ms. Lemons, did you copy all the consensus we have? Or we need to go, we need to identify them?
Yes, I did. So we're gonna make a little change to the language that there's no more than 50 employees prior to, we'll say, March 1st. The business tax license, the consensus I heard was to waive the $250, which is the penalty. But they must apply and pay the renewal fee or their new fee. One of the speakers brought up a good point, because if somebody hasn't paid for 3 years, I believe building development, when they are renewing their fee, they do charge them for back to when they initially had their license. So they would be charged for 3 years or 4 years or however long they haven't had a license. And that's just the fee, which is usually not more than $50 or so. It's based on the business. We'll change the language that the business needs to be within the incorporated city limits of Tarpon Springs. We'll clarify that the revenue loss that says that the business must have experienced a loss in revenue and then document that loss. We'll clarify that it is, if you're a business owner owning multiple businesses, you only receive 1 grant regardless of the number of businesses that you own. And we can include in the language that if the applications exceed the funding, that there may be an opportunity for additional funding. We'll change it to a 2-week time period. I think that's what I heard.
Yes.
We'll also add to the ineligible businesses, home occupations or virtual businesses that are ineligible, just to clarify that. And then we'll add language that's first come, first served for the grant period. I think that's all I had.
Well, the next meeting, you're going to let us know if we have more applications that are funding, so we can adjust that, correct?
Yes.
Did you
Yes.
get the 2-week process time?
Yeah, she got that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Do we have consensus on the retroactive fines, or were you looking for consensus on that, Karen?
Well, in talking with building development today, they told me that if somebody hasn't renewed for several years, they do charge them the renewal fees for each year plus the penalty. But if you waive the penalty, they would still be charging the fee. For example, if somebody hasn't renewed since 2017, they'd be charged 2017, 18, 19, and 20.
Okay, but we're still
not the penalty.
waiving the penalty, right?
Still waiving
Yes.
the penalty.
Okay, I'm good with that.
I am
Yeah.
too.
The consensus was on the penalty only.
Yes.
Karen, you have any more? You're done.
I think I'm done.
That's all that I had.
Okay. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything.
I had a clarification, Mayor, if
Sure, go
About-
ahead, Commissioner
about
Carr,
the-
yes.
about the two businesses, the way it was proposed was if there's any funds left over, then if the business owner owns multiple businesses with multiple storefronts, then they could qualify for an additional grant. Based on what Karen said, that didn't sound like that was going to be the case. I just wanted clarification on that from the board. If we could, I'm fine with having a second business receiving a grant as long as all the other businesses have applied within the 2 weeks time frame. So I wasn't sure what the clarification was at. It sounded like it was kind of not super clarified by everybody.
I think we had consensus on that, Commissioner, that after a certain point, if all of the people, as long as whoever could apply was able to apply, if there was leftover monies, then somebody with a second or third business could reapply.
Yeah, I thought so too. I just want to make sure Karen
That's
had that
how it was, yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, I'm good.
Mark, Mr. Licorice, how you plan to advertise and pass the word out to the business community to apply for that?
Every way possible. Through Facebook, through email blast, through the chamber, through every method that we have to get the word out, we're gonna get it out.
We're going to do press release too, so make sure that the TV gets it as well.
Yes. I
Okay.
think some of them are watching. I hope Jeff is writing as he's watching the meeting
He's
tonight.
watching, but I'm sure. He always does.
Yes.
Commissioner Sieber, you have something you would like to say?
I just on that subject, I know that the chamber sent out an email to all business owners that are members, and the Merchants Association did too.
Okay.
So we all received it immediately when it was proposed.
Good. I just want to make sure that nobody's being left out.
Yes.
If we have no more comments and we have first and second, roll call. Ms. Jacobs?
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Carr,
Yes.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Terapany,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, that concludes the agenda tonight, and we go to the staff comments. Chief,
No comments, Mayor.
no
Thank you.
comments? Mr. Perez, where are you? Here.
I'm here.
Any
No
comments?
comment. No comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Mark, Mr. Licorice. Any
I just
comments?
want to say from a team effort, and that's from the commission throughout all of our employees, the exemplary way the entire team has handled this emergency, how they're continuing to work for the city and the citizens and try to have as little disruption, because of disruption in the world, there's a little disruption with city functions that we can. So the people we have that are working at home, working in the office, all the way down the line, again, from the commission down through, I think everybody has put in maximum effort for the citizens, and I just praise everybody for the teamwork. And we'll be ready to keep going with that teamwork as this thing develops and hopefully doesn't get worse and we start seeing better. So we're prepared, ready, and everybody is full-fledged for the team and for the city and its citizens. And it's good to see.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs,
I have no comments. Thank
no
you.
comments? Ms. Levens, thank you for your work. And Suzanne, if you please thank all you technicians and everybody in your team. Thank you so much. And we are now going to the Vice Mayor, Terrapini. Any comments?
I just have a question, Mayor, just to try and utilize the opportunity to ask a question of staff. I just wanted to know if we're still on track for receiving applications at the end of April for the Forbes property, and then if this commission still intends to hear it on May 5th.
As far as I'm concerned, we are.
Okay, just making sure. I was,
As we see,
it's crazy right now.
This is our first test of a virtual meeting. Like I said, we've had a bunch leading up to this. So I think we'll be professionals at this and going. So I don't see any reason those type of things need to be held up.
Sounds
If
good.
the
Thank you.
board's wishes.
Commissioner Sieber,
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Carr.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to again reiterate what some other board members have said. Great job to the staff. I think this meeting went great overall. Thank you for the proactiveness and getting everyone prepared for this meeting and making sure we had the right equipment and timeline and et cetera. So I think this went smoothly. Again, we live in a great town of Tarpon Springs. The city has a lot of vibrant businesses, and it's sad to see the situation that we're in right now with the businesses. But at the end of the day, I do want to congratulate the Board of Commission that we came together and were able to approve this grant. So thank you very much to the rest of the board for supporting all this, and Commissioner Donovan again for proposing this. I think it's a great asset to our community and showing support to our businesses. My wife did have our son on March 30th. His name is Paxton Brooks Charlie Carr. So he's doing well. He's here at home with my wife now, and they're getting a lot of, small naps and not a lot of sleep at night, but things are good. He's healthy. My wife is recovering, and it's a great thing to see. And my daughter is excited to be a big sister.
Commissioner Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll be brief. I just want to congratulate Commissioner Carr on Paxton. That's fantastic. And again, thank you to Suzanne and IT for making all this possible. And thank you so much to our city manager and Karen for all your hard work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the employees for their hard work and dedication, especially during this crisis. All these people that are working from home, our front line, the police, fire, public works, public services, and thank you all for your service to Tarpon Springs, and we are grateful. I also like to thank our hospital workers, the Advent Health of North Pinellas. I would like to thank the doctors, the nurses, the staff, the administrators for the ongoing commitment to our community. They do an excellent job. We really appreciate it. Also, I'd like to remind to everyone that please follow the recommendations of the CDC, the social distancing, no gatherings, and stay home, and please stay safe and healthy. Mr. Licouris, I just got a note here that I'd like to ask you a question. Just a few hours ago, I received several phone calls and messages in regards to 5G telephone poles that they install in different locations in front of the high school and in front of the middle school. I spoke to Mr. Macris, and he believes that the utility companies did not issue, the city did not issue any permits to them. Can you please look into it and see what the story is with that? But if I remember correctly, Mr. Licouris, we had a moratorium on the 5G. Would you look and see what the status is with that and let us know?
And we also plan for the work session on the 21st. We plan to discuss that and an ordinance we have to bring forward. So at the work session that we had talked about and we had said the 21st, we'll be bringing that information to you up to date.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. And just a last note, I just received, I love this teleconferencing. I just received a message from former Commissioner Peter Delagas, and it says, "Good job to all." Peter Delagas. He's thanking everybody for doing a good job. Isn't it nice? Guys, thank you, and have a great night. Well, that concludes the special meeting, and it's adjourned at, what time is it? 7:51 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
I don't have a gavel,
Mayor, thank
guys.
you,
so
Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Thanks again, Suzanne.